Hello, this is Stephen Whitefield, and this is my report on a survey that was undertaken as part of the Mayors for Economic Growth initiative into the impact of COVID-19 on local economic development partnerships in 6 Eastern Partnership states. Now, I think we know that the COVID-19 outbreak has had a major impact on many, if not all, of the municipalities involved as partners in this project. It was already clear from the beginning of the pandemic that some sectors were likely to suffer more than others across the region. Nevertheless, the sectoral impacts of the virus are not as yet properly quantified or well understood. So in May 2020, it was decided to carry through a survey assessment among Mayors for Economic Growth signatories in the Eastern Partnership countries in order to learn and understand in more detail how the pandemic concretely has affected the municipalities' economies and their battle for economic growth and job creation. So the survey involved 216 local economic development partnerships in 6 countries: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, and it took place between May and June of 2020. Each partnership was asked to complete a brief questionnaire in which they provided numerical scores to their experiences of COVID and its impact, their prospects in light of COVID, and their priorities given the COVID experience across a number of economic dimensions: employment, growth, and municipal revenue in particular. They were asked for their assessment regarding both how COVID-19 has affected them so far and on their expectations of the impact of COVID-19 over a 2 to 3 year time horizon. And after assessing the impact of COVID-19, they were then asked to consider whether new sectors might have emerged as potential sources of economic development and to identify sectoral priorities for investment. Let me start by outlining some of the key findings that emerged from the survey. The first, and perhaps not very surprising, was that there were significant differences across countries in the extent to which COVID-19 has impacted on the partnerships. We asked the partners what were the most important sectors of the economy for their local economic development plans, and broadly speaking, they highlighted food and beverage processing, agriculture, and tourism and accommodation. Now, the most negative consequences of COVID-19 were felt especially in terms of tourism and food services. What was interesting, however, was that expectations about the impact of COVID-19 over the next 2 to 3 years were quite varied across sectors. In fact, there was a negative correlation between the impact of COVID-19 to date and evaluations of future prospects, with many examples of positive expectations in future in areas very negatively impacted now. Priorities for future investment were focused on sectors that were generally of current importance to the local economy, chiefly agriculture and tourism. Optimism among local economic development partnerships was relatively high for the future, but also interestingly, optimism was a bit higher in places which were more negatively affected now by COVID-19. Let me now go into a little bit more detail, starting with the impact of COVID-19 on the partnerships at the point that the survey was actually conducted. We asked and were able to code responses on a scale that you can see in the figure on the right. Namely, we gave a score of 1 if the impact was positive, 0 if it had no impact, -1 if it was a negative impact, and -2 if it was a devastating impact. And as you can see, there is quite a lot of evidence of very negative to devastating impacts from COVID-19. That was true across employment, growth, and municipal revenue, with some countries being more negatively impacted than others, particularly Moldova and Ukraine, which were especially badly hit in tourism and in food services. However, as you can see in the next slide, the expected impact of COVID-19 on the partnerships in the next 2 to 3 years has a slightly, indeed strikingly different pattern than that for the impact to date. There were still strongly negative expectations in some countries, in the clothing sector in Moldova, mining in Moldova, wood processing in Armenia, and so on. However, there's a much more positive outlook in many sectors over a 2 to 3 year time horizon, especially positive in agriculture in Georgia and Belarus, food and beverages in Azerbaijan, Belarus and Georgia, retail in Azerbaijan, and especially tourism in Georgia. What appears to matter the most is current experience with COVID-19, but in a surprising direction. Those local economic development partnerships that have been hit particularly hard by COVID-19 to date are significantly less likely to have negative expectations for the future. And this, as we'll see when we discuss the policy implications, may be important in thinking about how stakeholders should respond. We were then interested in knowing whether the experience of COVID-19 had revealed or led the partnerships to consider potential new growth pockets that could move in and to be developed in order to mitigate some of the effects of COVID-19. Now, relatively few of the partnerships, only 27% of the partnerships, identified a new growth sector that had emerged in the post-COVID-19 situation. Interestingly, tourism was the single sector that was most likely to be mentioned as a new potential growth sector, indicating that a sector that was highly important for the implementation of many local economic development plans already is seen by others as having potential for them too, despite the fact that, of course, tourism had suffered a very negative impact of COVID-19 to date. There were a number of other sectors suggested by a large number of respondents, but the range of other sectors was extremely broad. If we were to single out a few, it might be information and communications technologies, business support, art and entertainment, and medical services. So given these experiences and assessments of the future impact of COVID-19, what did the partners think should be the main priorities for external investment support? So the two sectors that were among those most regularly identified as most important to the local economic development partnerships, agriculture and tourism, remain the highest priority among the largest number of LED partnerships for subsequent external investment support. Tourism is clearly the highest priority on average. Only in Moldova and in Ukraine is agriculture slightly more often selected on average. There are some sectors that are mentioned as priorities in some countries: clothing and jewelry in Azerbaijan, retail in Azerbaijan and Ukraine, food and beverages in Moldova. But in short, the results point to the importance of national and political nuance about priorities. But those sectors that were deemed of greatest importance to the local economic development partnerships before COVID-19 appear to remain the areas of greatest priority now for ongoing external support. So the world has not been transformed by the experience of COVID-19. If anything, some of the prior priorities have been reinforced by the experience. So, do the partnerships feel optimistic or pessimistic about the future? Well, as you can see from the slide, there are few who feel either very optimistic or very pessimistic. But there's a clear preponderance of optimism over pessimism. And as in the discussion of the expected impact of COVID-19 in the next 2 to 3 years, very interestingly, optimism is higher when the negative impact of COVID-19 to date has also been at its highest. So what, finally, are the policy implications of these findings? Well, first, I would suggest careful attention needs to be paid to national circumstances and local sectoral specificities. While there's quite broad agreement on some areas of current economic pain that are also often the most likely future positives for partners, agriculture, tourism, food services, there are also diverse new sectors that might produce economic benefits. So focused work with partners to elaborate understanding of these new sectors is recommended. Second, expectations of the future impact of COVID-19 among partners may be a better guide to the direction of external resources in the next period than experience of the initial impact of COVID-19. Our analysis suggests, therefore, that the current impact of COVID-19 may not be a good guide to future policy. Recovery is broadly expected, often in the worst hit sectors to date. Sectors that were identified to be priorities for external support before COVID-19 remain the most important now, agriculture and tourism in particular. Moreover, potential new sectors for development that indicate that tourism is perceived to have broader possibilities even than before the pandemic. So in short, COVID-19 may have been devastating, but it need not change how external partners should think about supporting the partnerships and the support that the partnerships themselves are seeking.